So basically, so my first question is, so the CEO's base salary was raised from 1 million, 1.1 million in 2016 to basically 25,000 increase in 2017, and the annual bonus target for the CEO was lifted from 90% to 100%. So how do you evaluate these increases? Could it be justified by the net income increase and the EPS improvement?
Yeah, I mean, first off, I think it's all justified. I think, I guess when I look at compensation, I tend to look at, the all-in total compensation. And so for the Wintrust CEO, Ed Waymer, his all-in compensation from 2016 to 2017 went up, I show about 9% to 4.2 million. And, obviously that's a lot of money for anybody. But, I certainly think if you look at Wintrust's performance over the past year, over the past decade, I think he's definitely earned it. And if you go back specifically to 2017, their earnings were up roughly 20%. Their tangible book value was up 12%. And the stock did well too. The stock was up. Their stock was up roughly 13% in 2017, and the regional bank index, it's called the KRE, was up about 6%. So,
what is the bank index?
What is it?
Yeah, the last index you just mentioned.
Yeah, well, the symbol is K. K is in kite, R is in Robin, E is in estate. KRE. It's basically an index of regional banks. I don't know. Off the top of my head, I don't know if it's 20 or 30 or something banks, and it basically tracks the performance of those banks.
So it outperformed this index.
Correct, it did. Now in full disclosure, the S&P 500 was up 19%. So so it underperformed the S&P, but I could go back a couple of years and Wintrust way outperformed the S&P. So you can pull all sorts of different numbers, and then even so far this year, Wintrust stacks up about 10%. The KRE is only up 5%, and actually the S&P's down 1.5%. So, any sort of increase that the CEO gets, I think, is certainly justified. And I think, again, on a total compensation basis, an increase of 9% I think that's very much reasonable.
But do you think this increase, 9% increase, is not enough? I mean, not matching with the good performance of the company in 2017.
Yeah, I guess I don't want to. I certainly wouldn't say. The board. They've got a compensation committee, and they set up various targets, and I think it's very much appropriate. I mean, we're again, I think you're talking about $4 million. That's a lot of money. So, and there's certain again, you look at the stock performance. Even though the stock performance should reflect the fundamental performance of the company, that it doesn't always play out. I mean, you could just have a bad stock market, but I think fundamentally the company's done well. And again, I think at the end of the day, tangible book value was up again 12% last year, and his compensation was up 9%. So I think that's pretty close. So for me, that's pretty good.
So did you just mean that although its stock performance isn't as well as its the book value performance, it's still like because the stock performance is subject to the macro market's influence, so it may not like necessarily be accordance with the company's performance. So overall, it's still good enough to justify this increase in the compensation.
Yes, I mean, yeah, no. So just to repeat, I want to make sure. Yeah, I mean, so the stock can be more impacted by some macro factors that are outside of your control sometimes, and even the performance of the company. I mean, you could be in a bad economic environment, so you're not going to grow your balance sheet as much. So that could have a negative impact, but that's all part of managing a business. So, but at the end of the day, and I've covered Wintrust for close to 20 years. I mean, these guys have always, been able to, grow the franchise and grow tangible book value. I mean, they've just done a very good job.
And so the company adopts 75 and 25 allocation of the bonus target, which means that 75% of the bonus target is weighted towards the company's performance, and 25% is weighted toward the individual objectives. So is this measurement a common and reasonable one in compared with its peer in the financial sector?
Yeah, I would say in general. I mean, I can't tell you the exact, for all the companies I cover, but yeah, I mean, so the majority here is based on how the company performs. So, and then, 25% is subjective. So I think I think whether it's 75-25 or, slightly different, I think looking at the absolute performance is the right way to look at things. Because, if you leave too much to be subjective, you can always sort of justify certain things one way or the other as to why, something should be higher or lower. So I think when you look at the actual numbers, I think it sort of makes it cut and dry or more black and white to a certain degree. So I do think those numbers they're fairly common. Yeah.
So in terms of the company's way of setting target for the company performance, for example, its target for 2017, the consolidated pre-tax net income was set at $385 million. So it's if the company outperformed this number, the executive are gonna get higher bonus award. So do you think this number is set at a appropriate level, reasonable level?
Yeah, I would say in general, yes. I think, the board, even though I cover the company, I'm an outsider, so certainly the board, knows what's going on, and yeah, I think you want to set reasonable targets, but you don't want to put targets in there that are either A, too high or B, too low.
So is this number what kind of relation, like $385 million is an easily approachable number for it, or kind of higher than its current capability?
So I'm sorry, so you said $385 million for what?
For the company level objective for 2017, the consolidated pre-tax net income.
Oh, pre-tax. Okay.
The pre-tax.
So 300 million, 385. Yeah. So on a pre-tax basis. Well, no, but that's what they did, I think, right?
Yeah, that's last year.
Yeah, so they did. I'm not looking exactly in the property. So they, on a pre-tax basis for 2017, I show pre-tax income of about $390 million. So if the target was $385 million, then they were slightly over. So number. So it looks like the actual was 390 million.
Oh, I'm looking at the fourth quarter earnings report, and so you remember that they actually got 390 million? Because I haven't found this figure yet. I'm looking at it. Oh, so they are like slightly over, so which proof that it is a reasonable number to be set.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So, for example, if you would start to wonder a little bit if they did 390 million and their target was 300 million. Well, that can't be. I mean, they did 300 and roughly 30 million in 2016. So 385 to be divided by 330. So that's their target was up 15-16% year over year. So that's a pretty big growth rate. So I think that's they did a good job to achieve that.
And about the 25% regarding the individual performance objectives, how do you evaluate this part? I mean, it's kind of vague as how the CEO can, whether he outperform the individual objective or not. How do you evaluate this kind of criteria?
Again, I mean, as far as some of that stuff, I mean, that's really company specific. But I mean, in addition to pre-tax earnings, a lot of different metrics as far as balance sheet growth, return on assets, return on equity, the level of non-performing assets, stuff like that. That all comes into play. And then I think that 25% too, is just stuff that you can't necessarily measure. So again, that me as an outsider, doesn't always clearly see. So.
Okay. So this company seems to be heavily weighted toward the incentive compensation rather than fixed components like base salary and like that. So and then is that its target performance-based compensation for the executive for the CEO was approximately 71% of the total compensation. So how do you evaluate this kind of strategy, like its focus on incentive compensation?
So your question is, what do I think about?
Yeah, think about this kind of the 70%, 71% focus on the performance-based compensation.
Performance versus a base amount or a fixed amount? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. No, listen, I most people in normal jobs, they get a base salary, and for the most, if they get a bonus, it's a very nominal amount. So regardless of how they, look at the professional athletes that make, tens of millions of dollars, their pay is typically fixed, regardless of how they perform. And you look at something like this, where a lot more is performance based. I think that's a good thing. It incentivizes, the said CEOs to, do what's right and, look to grow the company. So, I think it's the right way to do things.
Yeah, but is this 71%, is it, like, compared with its peers, is it a relatively high percentage of the total compensation, or it's just a common breakdown?
I'll be honest, I mean, that might be a little bit on the high side, but it's not completely out of whack, but I don't look at those numbers. I mean, I honestly don't get that detailed into the compensation and stuff. I mean, I think that's up to, as far as the breakout and stuff. I just don't, I haven't looked at it that way in a while.
Okay. So, another thing is the CEO pay ratio in Wintrust is 80-1. So is this ratio normal or a little bit high or low compared with its peer. So this ratio means
80 to
yeah. Sorry.
what do you? I don't follow. What is that ratio?
The
I don't
ratio.
know what that ratio is.
Yeah, the ratio is the CEO's annual total compensation versus the median of the annual total compensation of all the employees in the company. So it's 80 to 1.
I honestly I don't know. I can't tell you.
Okay, okay. Yeah, I know it's not your focus.
I mean, I think the other way to look at things too is how much stock does the CEO own, and the CEO of Wintrust owns a lot of stock personally, and I think that's a big thing. I mean, where I would personally think there's a red flag is if you've got somebody making a big amount of money, but they don't have a lot of stock, and I think the fact that Ed owns a lot of stock, he owns, I think, a little bit over 200,000 shares, which is worth more than what he makes in a year. I think that.
Oh, sorry.
I think that tells you a lot, and that's that ratio relative to other banks is favorable for Wintrust.
Oh, where can I find this number? The how many shares that he personally owns?
It's in the proxy.
Yeah, I could see like the stock awards and the option awards, but
if you go towards the hold on.
Thank you so much. I didn't think of this way.
Yeah, hold on. Let's see. It's towards the top. I think it looks like page 22. They break out the number of shares owned. So Ed owns 206,000 shares.
22. Oh, I see.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's the total amount of beneficial ownership.
Yeah, so 206,000 shares. The stock's trading at about $90 a share. That's a little bit over $18 million. So, even though he's making $4 million, he's got a lot more vested, in stock, and so, to the extent he's clearly going to do what's best for the company and the share price, and so I think a 9% increase in his pay is very reasonable, and even an 80 to 1 ratio. Again, I don't have that how that compares to other banks, but like I said, covering this bank for 20 years, and or roughly 20 years. I mean, they do what's right, and
But you mean this stock ownership is kind of more than many of its peer CEOs shares in their
yeah.
own
I mean,
companies?
I guess my point would be if we were having the same conversation, and instead of him owning 206,000 shares, he owned 5,000 shares. I would be a little worried, just because you would think, well, he's not as incentivized to care as much about how the stock performs versus how much he's getting paid each year. And you'll see if you go down the Wintrust does. If you're a CEO, you've got to own X amount of stock. I mean, there's different thresholds and stuff, and you can find that in the proxy. But Ed's one of the founders of the firm, of the bank, and
But does that suggest that the company, that he is having too much stock award, or he just bought his stock like just on his own behalf rather than being awarded by the company?
Yeah, I can't give you the exact breakout. I know he's bought stock over, again, you're looking at a 20-year time period, and he is, he founded this bank. You know, it was his vision. He's, you know, him and a few other people. So, you know, you get initial, you know, I guess sort of sweat equity, right? You know, I mean, all the time and effort you put into it. So, but yeah, I mean, certainly over the years, and you know, part of his annual performance, he can get stock awards and stuff like that. But that's very common too.
And also, this company seems to have this policy that they require the executive to own the stock that are like equivalent to a certain percentage of their base salary. I think 10%.
Yes.
Yeah, or so. So is this also a common policy?
Yeah, it's very. I'm just. Just looking. It's in here as far as the. Stock ownership. I saw it earlier.
Yeah, you mean the exact percentage?
Excuse me?
You mean the exact
Yeah.
percentage equivalent to the base salary?
Okay.
I think
So it's on. It's page 50.
50.
So
Thank you.
for the CEO, he's got to own
yeah.
six times his base salary.
Oh, yeah.
So the base was what, about $1 million or something, or a little over $1 million. So it's 6 or 7 million, and he owns over 2 times that. So I think that's yeah. So his base is 1.14 million times 6. You know, that's 6.8. Call it 7 million he needs to own, but he owns over 18 million. So
yeah,
I think that speaks for its. I think that speaks for itself. That's what we like to say is he's got a lot of skin in the game.
Got it. And about the prerequisite, is that a word? Just the prerequisite, the extra benefits, like other than this cash and stock, the other things. Yeah. Do you think it's reasonable?
Yeah, I mean, I don't see anything. Again, I'm not going to claim to. You know, it's really not up. I'm not going to claim to be an expert, but I don't see anything in here that's egregious or way out of whack.
Okay. Yeah, I think, I think this is all my questions. It is a little bit a little bit overwhelming for me so far. So I'm sorry that sometimes I didn't articulate my questions.
Did I help, or hopefully I helped? Or?
It's very helpful, especially when you remind me to look at the shares that he owns, because I was thinking more about the increase in the bonus and in the base salary. I didn't pay attention to the stock that he already owns.
Yeah, no, I think it's I mean, there's a lot of different ways to look at things, and again, I will just tell you from 20 years of experience, not just with Wintrust, but with a lot of banks, but you know, specifically Wintrust. These are very good people, very down to earth people. So again, I look at a lot of these numbers, and you know, I think they've earned it. I mean, they've put in a lot of hard work, and you know, it certainly, you know, but I do think, at least for me, I guess, that it, you know, back to how many shares they own, that is a big thing for me. I mean, if I had a CEO, like I told you, that instead of owning 200,000 shares, only owned, you know, a fraction of that would make me wonder. So the fact that he owns so much stock, he owns more than he has to, I think that clearly that tells me, at least, that his best interest lies comply with how the company does. Because just think about it. If he knew he was going to get paid $4 million this year, but he did something to cause the company to lose money, or have adverse performance, if that stock price goes down, that move in stock could impact him more than his salary.
Yeah.
So, just given how many shares he owns. So, that's just something, I think that's just a good thing to keep in mind.
Is that like a suggestion of his confidence in the companies?
Oh, I certainly think it does. Sure. I mean, I certainly think, you're voting with your wallet. So you own a lot. You own a lot of stock, and you think you're going to do good things. And I would certainly say in this case, Ed Waymer, he's a very good banker, and he's a very confident guy, and he knows what he's doing. So, why wouldn't you want to own stock in it? So.
Yeah. And I'm a little bit confused about when is it like they approve this? They approve the compensation package of 2018 in the upcoming shareholders meeting by the end of May, and then is this compensation package only like works for this exact year, and then next year they have to approve another package for next year on the next meeting? Is that how it works?
Yeah, but I think it's not like you. Well, maybe with a rare exception, it's not like you're changing. I mean, you're maybe just making little tweaks to different numbers or something. But yeah, I don't. You're not drastically changing things. For example, specifically, we've got lower tax rates now, so. All things equal, all banks should make more money because they're paying less in taxes. You're probably going to raise, we talked about the $380 million in pre-tax income. You're probably going to raise that more than you have in the past, that target level, because, it's on a pre-tax basis, so forget that. But yeah, again, even though it gets approved, you're not making drastic changes. Maybe some, in most situations.
And they are saying that they are making the 3-year target plan, which was approved in January 2017, for example. So I'm kind of confused about the timeline. But yeah, since it's already about half an hour, I have to take your time, so maybe I should let you go.
Just on the 3-year, I don't, it's hard to look, it's hard to look out much farther than, 2 or 3 years, before you reevaluate things. So I think that's just something you want to keep in mind. And, why do you do 3 years instead of 1 year or something? Well, sometimes you can have, in a short period of time, you can have other, just sort of things that are outside your control happen too. So I think you sort of try to pick somewhere in the middle, I guess is sort of the train of thought a lot of times too. But again, don't consider me to be necessarily a compensation expert as to why people get exactly what they do. Again, so
I know. I would say you are an analyst following this company.
Yeah. No, I'm just saying, just between it's just. But like I said, one of the keys for me again is going back to how much stock does somebody own, because that to me gives me the level of confidence somebody might have in their company and stuff. So that's probably the one thing I would leave you with.
Okay, I'll remember this.
Okay.
Yeah, it's really, really helpful. I didn't mean to drag you for so long. I'm sorry.
Oh, it's okay.
Sorry.
That's okay. Glad to help.
And it's really nice of you to explain these details to me.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's really helpful. I really appreciate it.
Okay, not a problem.
Yeah, and I will send you the article after it is published. Thank you so much.
Okay, super.
Thank
have a good day.
Have a good day. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye bye.